Sodom and Gomorrah are the names of two neighboring cities from the time of patriarch Abraham, a story told in the book of Genesis. According to the biblical account, these cities were burned because of their grave sins. Because of this, many of us wonder what crime these two cities have committed. What is their story? Why is the word sodomite used to refer to gay men? Very well, dear listeners, we will answer all these questions in this video. Join us on this fascinating journey through sacred scripture, and together we discover the true story of Sodom and Gomorrah. Before going into this topic, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell so YouTube notifies you every time we publish a new video. Start. The 1970 Ancash earthquake, also known locally as the 1970 earthquake, was an earthquake that occurred on Sunday, May 31st, 1970 at 3 p.m. local time. It reached intensity 7, 9 on the current intensity scale and intensity level N on the Mercalli scale. It is widely felt throughout the coast and mountains of the Ancash region, as well as in the bordering areas of southern and northern Peru. Nothing can predict the misfortune that is about to happen. Suddenly, a large-scale seismic movement began to be felt across much of Peru. The strength of the earthquake at that time was 7, 9 on the seismic scale, and the epicenter was 44 kilometers southwest of Chimbo Port, causing millions of people to flee in terror. Scenes of panic followed one after another. Then, adults and children ran toward open places in search of safety. The others stayed at home, and the women cried out on the mountainside, "Lord, please appease your anger." When the movement finally stopped, the people returned home without imagining the scale of the tragedy that had tragically hit the streets of Las Acequias, with the town of Yungay the hardest hit. Yungay wasn't just shaken by the earthquake. The most severe tragedy occurred 10 minutes later. The eastern flank of the Huascaran snowcap collapsed, causing a flood towards the town of Yungay, destroying everything in its path. The city was buried, with only the 4 palm trees of Plaza de Armas bearing silent witness to the disaster, turning it into a vast cemetery, leaving some 20,000 townspeople alive. People brag a lot about the beauty of their city. He also told me that 3 missionaries had been martyred in this city. I don't know whether the latter is true or not. Only God knows. But all this makes us think that the city of Yungay was subjected to God's judgment, which reminds us of the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom and Gomorrah are among 5 cities located in the fertile Jordan Valley. This area has extraordinary beauty and fertility. Its appearance charmed Lot, who chose for himself the whole plain of the Jordan, and Lot went toward the east. The men of Sodom were very wicked and sinners against Jehovah. Abraham was not throwing Lot out of the promised land. He simply told him to choose to go further north or further south. But Lot's eyes went in another direction. It is not like the land of Egypt, from which you came, where you sowed your seed and watered it with your foot, like a vegetable garden. The land to which you are passing to take it is a land of mountains and plains, which drinks the waters of the rain from heaven, a land of which the Lord your God cares. The eyes of the Lord your God are always upon it, from the beginning of the year to the end. Lot liked the lifestyle of Egypt, where one had access to river water at all times, no matter what one did. In case for him, he would encounter many risks and problems as a consequence of choosing material inheritance over spiritual inheritance. First, he was kidnapped. Then, as we will see, the city where he lived will be destroyed. His wife will die, and his daughters will go astray. In the end, he who sought this world lost it, but we'll leave that for last. Despite the beauty and countless good things in these cities, Sodom and Gomorrah were also famous for their wickedness. Instead of living according to God's transformation, God's use of sex, filling it with vile and shameful passions, Paul lists the sinful acts that people began to practice when they turned their backs on God. In Romans 26 and 27, he says, "Therefore God gave them over to shameful passions. For even his women have changed the natural use of what is unnatural. And also, men, abandoning the natural use of women, develop lust for each other, Men commit shameful acts towards men. Because of lust and homosexuality, they are subjected to punishment of the eternal flame. Dear listeners, what Jude calls unnatural vices are often called alternative lifestyles in our modern age. This term may seem harmless in our culture, but it refers to sexual behavior that is unnatural and offensive to God. When we read Genesis 19:58, it is easy to understand what Paul and Jude were thinking. Sodom's society was filled with sexual immorality, including homosexual acts and violent abominations. In front of me, and when I saw it, I took them off. Second, they commit adultery, survive, and defend the offender. In Jeremiah 23:14 it says, "Among the prophets in Jerusalem I have seen things that are wrong. They committed adultery, walked in deceit, and strengthened the hand of the wicked, so that no one could turn from their wickedness. For me is Sodom, and its inhabitants are Gomorrah." Third, they proclaim their sin without being ashamed of it. Read Isaiah 38 verses 28 to 32. In chapter 18 of Genesis, Abraham successively reduces the number of 50 righteous men to 45, 40, 30, 20, and finally 10. And here the question arises, why did Abraham not continue to ask less than 10? Maybe he didn't dare to find out whether Lot was really lost or not, which worried him to the point that he was worried. He decided not to continue asking. Surely, if he had insisted on asking whether God would destroy the city if there was only one righteous person, 2 angels would have come to Sodom to save righteous Lot. Genesis chapter 19 says, "In the evening the 2 angels came to Sodom, and Lot sat at the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he stood up to meet them, bowed down to the ground, and said, 'Now, please, go to your servant's house, stand there, and wash your feet. And tomorrow morning you will wake up and leave.' And they said, 'No, we'll stay out tonight.' But he persisted with them, and they went with him. And they needed to wash their feet after walking the dusty road from the plain of Mamre to Sodom wearing open shoes like sandals, typical of that time. So, in addition to bringing relief, this gesture is also a way of expressing and showing hospitality to visitors. At first, in order not to cause inconvenience, tourists hesitated to accept the invitation and offered to spend the night on the street or square. But Lot, aware of the danger, insisted, "Let's bring them out so we can get to know them." Then Lot went out to the gate, closed the door behind him, and said, "My brothers, I beg you not to do such evil. Hey, I have 2 daughters who have never known any men. I will bring them to you, and do with them as you wish. Don't do anything to these people, for they have come under the shadow of my roof." And they said, "Go away." And they added, "This stranger has come to live among us, and will he become a judge? Now we will treat you worse than them." Note, Lot thought that was wrong. Now, we are surprised that Lot was willing to give his daughters to men, as well as those men's sinful desires. The offer was terrible and indefensible. The men of Sodom display shocking depravity, but we are also shocked by Lot's willingness to offer his daughters to the mob. Since this is the sinful desire of the aforementioned crowd, we can further understand this horrific description when considering the low status of women in G. The blind men are supernatural. Now, the physical blindness of the crowd corresponds to their spiritual blindness. Let's continue with the story in the Bible. They said to Lot, "Do you have anyone else here, your son-in-law, your sons, your daughters, and all that you have in this city? Take them out of this place, for we will destroy this place because their cry against them has gone up before the Lord." Therefore the Lord sent men to destroy him. Then Lot went out and told his sons-in-law, who were mocking him, that they should also run away with him. They laughed. Lot lived as long as both of them without any noticeable difference, that they took his dire warning as a joke. It is clear that Lot chose this place to live, having strayed from God's will for his life. And it is also clear that he did not bear witness to his faith nor defend his own values. This situation is similar to the current situation of many so-called Christians who are spending their lives compromising their Christian values. According to the Lord's mercy toward him, they brought him outside the city. We can say that Lot, despite everything, still belonged to God. Even if I only have a Genesis account, I'm not so sure. But because the Apostle Peter, in his second letter, called him a righteous man, I believe that he was truly saved. He became righteous by God through his faith and followed Abraham, sympathizing with him as they both offered worship and sacrifice to God. This small city near Sodom and Gomorrah would have escaped the negative influence of these large centers. Therefore, his moral depravity will be identical. Therefore, the solution that Lot proposed is not really ideal. Regardless, it was approved, and he was able to go to the small town of Zor. But his efforts to disobey God's instructions and follow his own plans show that even though he had left Sodom, his spiritual faithfulness had suffered benefits, and he will face other problems in the future. Ham would be violated, at least in principle. Now that Lot and his family were safe, God rained brimstone and fire on Sodom and Gomorrah. These cities were completely and severely judged, but only after God confirmed their great wickedness and gave them a righteous testimony through Lot. Today, many people believe that these cities lie beneath the Dead Sea and that their utter destruction is evidence of God's judgment and grace in rescuing the righteous. As we mentioned earlier, before this example of Melchizedek and Abraham, they were greatly blessed and had clear evidence of God's care for them. Surname. But they refused everything. We also see Lot's wife look back and turn into a pillar of salt. Why did Lot's wife stop and look toward the city? I think the answer is twofold. First of all, I think she didn't want to leave Sodom because she loved it. Of course, she also loved Lot, but there were things there that she treasured and felt very attached to. It is faith. Through our faith and our Christian witness, the Bible shows us that without faith, without this communion, and without obedience to the Word of God, our spiritual life we will be extinguished. A divided heart will lead to disobedience. Second, another reason Lot's wife looked back was because she did not believe in God and did not value the instructions God gave her. They must not stop or look back. Lot believed God and obeyed, not his wife, and there he lay, perishing with all this. His belief in God and his faith led him to love God's will and plans. Therefore, he does not feel bound to this world, a world that is being destroyed by evil, by violence, by injustice, by contempt for human dignity that God has given to his creatures, and by the fact of completion. God's mercy. Surely he also remembered that God would protect his nephew Lot because he had promised to save the righteous from punishment. Here it is good to recall the advice of the Apostle John in his first letter. Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Abraham, dear listener, if we want to escape eternal punishment, we must flee the deception of this world. Many people are like Lot, loving what the world offers them, even knowing clearly the evil that surrounds the world. They are agreed to participate in its evil works instead of turning away from them. The Bible teaches us that we must flee from the works of darkness and rebuke them. Lot's decisions were the cause of his downfall. He lost everything he had, his material goods, his wife, the consequences of them. The best thing is to flee from this sinful world. Dear listener, let us not wait to lose everything we have and see ourselves ruined by sin. Let us escape in time from its tarry consequences and eternal damnation. And so, we come to the end of this Bible study. Thank you for being part of our Bible Mysteries channel. God bless you greatly. It's all for me, and it will be with me until the next video.